On the recommendations at the ongoing national conference for more states to be created. We are joined in the studio now by Honorable Dayo Saka Fafumi to talk more on the issue. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, how viable is it to create more states considering the fact that the existing ones are still struggling to cope?
Essentially, I'll start by saying that the need of Nigeria does not really lies in the creation of additional states. But for us to think of creating additional state, we need to address some vital areas which has to do with the RAMFAC. How do we allocate the resources that we have as a nation? As long as the federal government are not ready to reduce what goes into the federal allocation to federal government, which is about 52% of the gross earning of the country, I don't see the need for us to create additional state. However, if federal government is ready to reduce their 52%, then we can be discussing the issue of creating additional states. Now, the additional states, which I think we're looking at, Nigeria cannot afford to have 52. We cannot afford to have additional 18 states. It will total about 54 states. Even America, that is about 4 or 5 times larger than Nigeria, have 52 states. And 2 of these states, I can say that in America, the state of Texas and California is larger than the entire entity called Nigeria. So if such a large geographical area could have 52 states, why are we thinking of having 54 states when we can't even fund it? For me, I want to say that the only reason why we should think of creating additional states should be if we're able to, reduce what goes into the federal government. And more importantly, the only reason being reduced is that the unsettled marriage of which resulted as a result of the amalgamation of 1914. And that is the reason why a lot of people are saying that we should go in different ways and have more states created. I'm of the view that except we're able to reduce what goes into the federal government, bring it down, develop the states, allow practice true federalism, allow the state to grow at their own pace, we should not be thinking of compounding the already existing problems.
Now, talking about true federalism, that's where we want to go to now. It's been said oftentimes by critics and pundits that, look, the federal structure Nigeria is currently operating is more or less like a failure. It's not actually getting, what people actually desire from it. So against this background, why the agitation now for state creation? You haven't actually maintained the federal structure that you have, with regards to ethnic diversity and so many distractions, contradictions every now and then. So why these agitations now?
Well, for me, I think the agitation will further deepen the crisis. If more states, in the process of dividing or creating more states, a lot of people will be aggrieved. For me, it will further tear us apart. At this point, what we should concentrate on is to see how we can harness our resources, channel these resources to develop the existing states to a level that if the states are self-independent and where every state is able to determine its own economy rather than depending largely on what comes from the federation account. It is at that point, I think, we deserve to think of creating additional states. For now, my sincere view on this is that we should look at other problems rather than thinking of creating additional states.
In looking at other problems, let's look at the problem of insurgency. Do you think the government has done enough, to secure the release of the abducted Chibok schoolgirls?
For me, I think the present administration is not capable of handling this situation. I think largely we expect them to have approached it with a more, result-oriented approach rather than when they were not too sure if the thing actually happened or not. But largely I would say that the effort put so far by the federal government, though it's well beyond Mr. President himself. That is why he had called for international help. And that is why the international committees are doing everything needful to ensure that we are able to, arrest the situation in Nigeria. But having said this, the federal government, the primary responsibility is protection of lives and property. If any government is found wanting in this area, it will not be seen to have effectively, discharged its responsibility as the president and commander of the armed forces. For me, we have the PDP-led administration have not done enough in terms of, trying to secure the release of these Chibok girls.
Now, talking about result-oriented approach, now we're hearing about the president asking for another $1 billion loan, to fund this counter-insurgency approach. And despite the allocation of almost over 900, and figures I have here, 968.12 billion naira
to the
defense, to the defense ministry, and in 2014 budget. And coupled with that, about 3.5 years that you've been involved in this insurgency or counter-insurgency, Nigerians actually haven't seen the results in this regard, the impact. So is this justified, this new approach, this loan issue?
Well, for me, I would say that it is not as if the parliament, both the Senate, I learned the Senate are already considering approving it. It is their constitutional responsibility. They can't do anything if it is being laid before them for consideration. The Senate will have nothing to do other than to look at the merit, as long as it is targeted at solving the people's problem, which is the insurgents of Boko Haram. There's nothing they can do as a house to stop the president from, embarking on such expenditure. But having said that, I want to say clearly that we have not been too impressed with how the security of this nation is being handled. We have not seen enough data or indication that even this money will be spent judiciously in ensuring that the lives of an average Lagosian and an average Nigerian, is safe. And more importantly, we only believe that this fund, if approved by the legislature, of which I know Nigerians have their say, they have their views. If the Nigerians want it approved, the legislature will do that. But the most important thing is they must be prepared to follow it and ensure that the money is spent for what they requested the money for.
Very important points there, I must say. Honorable Dayo Saka Fafumi, many thanks to you for joining us on TVC Evening News at 4.
Thank you.
And moving on now.